In recent months, the Fear and Hunger series has gained a significant following and widespread popularity. It's no mystery as to why. Video game analysis and those that partake in it love a story that isn't told directly to the player. Picking apart disparate lore tidbits and revelations in need of greater context is the bread and butter of the endeavor. Fear and Hunger has plenty of this to offer. By the very nature of the game, there is very little in the way of canon. Each playthrough can be entirely distinct, even down to the most extreme of actions available to the player. This means that its heroes, the four available protagonists, can be interpreted any number of ways. Ragnar can be played as a noble wildman, with morals stronger than the man that ravaged his home, or a desperate cannibalistic savage ready to sacrifice a child to the dark gods for power. Our goal here today is to discuss what we can of these heroes. Many discussions of the game fall on its overarching potential narratives, or the setting, or the near infinite mysteries hidden within the dungeon. However, today our focus will be on the four desperate souls that plunge down into the dungeon of Fear and Hunger. To this end, this will be your only spoiler warning. Not only will I be covering spoilers for both the first game and sequel Termina, I will be covering, as in-depth as I can, what little can be considered canon from the first game as confirmed in the second. So, to begin. Darce Catalyst was born to a noble family in the kingdom of Rondon. Born with a dominating soul, Darce is a natural leader, easily able to sway others, but it also leaves her with difficulty in self-reflection. In her youth, it was decided for Darce that she would be a knight, and rigorous training has made her a fierce fighter. Darce is a fervent worshipper of All-Mur, a new god, an ascendant human that achieved divinity. This is in stark contrast to the old gods, ancient eldritch entities that are more forces of nature than sapient conscious creatures. All-Mur's worship teaches compassion and charity, and because of it, Darce saw through the hypocrisy of her nation's nobles, sending armies to pillage and destroy while claiming it was for the betterment of the people. Her disillusionment pushed Darce to potentially renounce her knighthood. However, her family threatened to disown her if she did. Amid this crisis, she met the Knights of the Midnight Sun, and their leader, Lagarde. Due to her experience, Darce was readily welcomed and given a position of authority in the company. However, Lagarde grew obsessed with the occult, and ordered his men to assault the nation of Oldegard to retrieve a specific artifact, the Cube of the Depths. The raid was an objective success, but gave Rondon nobles the excuse they needed to throw Lagarde in chains. The Knights of the Midnight Sun were completely crushed, leaving Darce alone to mount a rescue mission to liberate Lagarde from the dungeon. This is all confirmed in Darce's backstory. While some minor choices are up to the player to determine what gear and stats she starts with, these events are confirmed. What Darce gets up to in the dungeon is a little more fluid, but certain things are either confirmed outright or most likely given her written characterization. First and foremost on this list is the girl. This is a young child imprisoned in the dungeon. Her origins are a mystery at first, but it's eventually revealed that she's the child of Lagarde and the new goddess Nilvan the Endless. Nilvan had the girl to usurp the old gods. She, like many others, fell for the trap of divinity by becoming a new god, and having hit the metaphysical glass ceiling, had her child to achieve what All-Mur had achieved, becoming something more than the new gods, with the power to rival the old gods. All of this is unknown to the dungeon's explorers unless they make contact with Nilvan, very, very deep in the dungeon and its twisted realm. Found near the very beginning, the girl is just a normal child at first glance. The player needs to go to great lengths to protect the girl, and she obviously doesn't contribute much in combat and is very vulnerable. While any hero can free the girl and bring her with them, Darce is the most likely to do so. She is the only one explicitly stated to have altruistic sympathies that would drive her to protect an innocent soul in the face of the dungeon's dangers. The girl can meet any number of horrible ends in the dungeon. She can be killed in combat, she can be sacrificed in a ritual for magic power, or she can be sold to Pocket Cat, a child-snatching monster. These events are demonstrably non-canon. The girl's fate is to be taken down to the corpse of the god of the depths, and there she binds with the divine remnants of its soul. Her life of pain and neglect, amplified by the shard of divinity, gives birth to the god of fear and hunger. Far from All-Mur's perfect divinity, the god of fear and hunger is representative of humanity's suffering, the meaningless slog that is the average poor bastard's life. This is canon, and must have come to pass, as the consequences of this event paved the way for the state of the world in Termina. Suffering is a core part of humanity, and the birth of the god of fear and hunger creates an age of intense suffering. But in hand with this suffering is advancement. The industrial age brings new technology, crunching lowly lives in its gears. New medical advancements come with human experimentation. War becomes a more efficient, more bloody endeavor than it was before the advent of artillery and trench warfare. Bringing things back to the first game, the girl must make it to the God of the Depths, and therefore must be freed from her cage. While any hero can do this, Darce is most likely to do this with good intentions. However, when you play as any of the other three, you will find Darce in the Cave Dweller village, being attacked by the Dwellers. Generally speaking, the circumstances you find heroes in, while not playing as them, can be taken as a canon step in their journey through the dungeon. Who steps in to save Darce is up for debate, and not a particularly confirmable portion of the story, but one of the other three does, allowing the two to secure the Keep of the Depths from the Cave Dwellers. This is the artifact Lagard ravaged Oldegard for, and the key to progressing into the dungeon's deepest depths. Darce pursues the cube because she knows Lagard isn't far away from his fixation. However, she'll come to be disappointed. On the default difficulty, Lagard can be reached within 30 minutes, saved, and added to the party. This opens a great number of potential endings and gives you a solid party member. However, this isn't canon. Lagard dies in the dungeon, and this is confirmed because Darce's unique ending must come to pass. In this ending, Darce delves into the ancient sea of Mahabra, opened by the cube, for its magical secrets, and uses them to resurrect her love. This gives birth to the Yellow King, or Kaiser, as he's come to be known in Termina. Because Lagard's resurrected form is present a few hundred years in the future, he must die here, and be resurrected by Darce. What happens to her after this is unclear. Whether her affections were returned by the risen Lagard or not, whether she died of old age or was killed in his service, or even by him, is unknown. So, Darce was a knight of Rondon, who then joined Lagard, went into the dungeon to free him, likely freed the girl along the way, and after finding her love dead, used the secrets of Mahabra to resurrect him, creating the Yellow King that would go on to terrorize the world as Kaiser. However, while Darce freed the girl, who took her deeper into the depths? Khara hails from humble origins. A common criminal and highwayman, he's led his life doing what he needed to survive, be it pickpocketing or burglary, and hails from the eastern sanctuaries. Shady figures from Rondon approach him with an offer to infiltrate their own nation's prison to secure a man named Lagard, and are willing to pay a king's ransom for the man. Khara knows little about what's going on, or why the man's so important, and he cares even less, taking the job readily. As we'll come to find out later, Khara's wife, Celeste, is an indentured sex worker and pregnant. For the first time in his life, Khara's endless soul allows him to do something for someone else's sake, and wants to pay from this last job so that he and his wife can break away from their seedy past to start an honest life together. His endeavor doesn't start off well. You can find him locked up in the cells at the very beginning of the dungeon. At first, he'll steal from you, then bugger off. If you don't hold against him, he'll then join your party permanently when you encounter him again in the mines. Like the other three, Khara has his own ending, and arguably his is the happiest. Mahabra is robbed of priceless artifacts at his hands, and Khara returns to Rondon, sells his treasures, buys his wife's freedom, and the two live a life in luxury, although Khara spends the rest of his life struggling with PTSD. Aside from that, he gets away scot-free, and he and his wife have their happy ending. This cannot come to pass. The other three unique endings are all canon, so none of the other four can die down in the depths, and someone has to escort the girl there so that the god of fear and hunger can be born. Of the four, Darce is both the most compassionate and likely to let the girl go, and also in the best position to, as Khara is locked up at the time. However, Darce doesn't take Lagard's canon first death well, and with Khara driven by his desire to provide for his pregnant wife, it's most likely he sees to the girl's protection from there. Down the pit of the depths, Khara witnesses the girl's ascension to divinity. The god of fear and hunger doesn't just attack him, it smothers him in suffering. And when he struggles against it, she sees his struggle, and grants him the equal and opposite to suffering, mercy. Khara will never see his wife or their child, and they'll never know the role he played in changing the world by bringing about the first truly human god. This is his fate, as unfortunate as it may be. Ragnar is a wild man from Oldegard, and likely the only one to survive Lagard's purge. Before this, he and his people were seafaring folk, and they had traveled all the way to Vinland, the setting standing for the Americas. There, they encountered unspeakable horrors, and Ragnar barely managed to escape with an artifact known as the Cube of the Depths, having lost many of his comrades along the way. Contrary to his contemporaries, he isn't in the dungeon to save his loved ones or for the treasure of eldritch knowledge. He's here for good old-fashioned revenge, seeking out Lagard to avenge his family and friends that were killed at the man's order in his search for the cube. If you play as Ragnar on the standard difficulty, you can choose to break Lagard's neck upon finding him alive. If Darce is in your party, she'll go into a fury and attack you. If Ragnar is in your party as an NPC, and you reach Mahabra with Lagard in your party as well, he'll choose to attack Lagard here, and you'll have to choose whose side to take. Again, if Darce is present and Lagard is killed, she'll be furious. All of this, however, is non-canon. As previously established, Lagard is found dead in his cell. Unable to have his revenge, Ragnar sells for extermination. In the end, he's kind of an inverse to Darce. The Knight of Rondon starts off with an altruistic attitude and goes out of her way to help people when she can, but ends up selfishly resurrecting her lover and creating a monster that will eventually burn all of Europa in war. Whereas Ragnar starts his journey only caring for his revenge, and then, when he is denied this, he sells for slaying other monsters to protect people. Ragnar's unique ending requires collecting every unique soul type in the game. This means slaying every single major boss and enemy, including even the new gods in Mahabra. This he does for the good of humanity, slaying evil in the dark so that it can never come out to the light. In the deep caves beneath the dungeon, the heroes can encounter a monstrous dog named Moonless. While she at first gives a terrible fight, she can be given rotten meat to make her friendly, and she will join your party, proving a valuable ally. In Termina, Moonless can be encountered once again, although she's grown significantly since the events of the first game. She can be fought, but cannot be defeated, and only relents when August, a red-haired young man, appears and calms her down. He cryptically explains very little, claiming Moonless is a friend of the family, and leaves it at that. This one scene would seem to confirm several events in the first game as canon, along with several events between the two games. First, that Ragnar would not only survive the dungeon and escape, but that his unique ending came to pass, and he became known as a near-mythic monster hunter, but that he would also, as he muses on his way out of the dungeon, go on to start over and have another family, this lineage apparently culminating in August in the second game. In addition to all of this, it would seem that Ragnar is the one to tame Moonless and recruit her, and that she not only survives as well, but goes on to join in his hunts, and sticks with his family for as long as her supernatural lifespan will allow. Of note, when Moonless appears in Termina, she has two swords impaled in her back, Black Steel and Miasma. The meaning of this isn't exactly clear. Both can be encountered in the first game. Black Steel is known simply as the Eastern Sword here, and is found in the thicket. The player must defeat the ghost of its previous owner to claim the blade. It's significantly nerfed in Termina, likely having lost its cursed power over the years, but it's still a force to be reckoned with. The Miasma can't be looted in Termina, but its distinct form is still apparent regardless. In the first game, the Miasma can only be found behind a locked door, which can only be opened by the Crow Emblem key, dropped by the devastatingly powerful Crow Mauler. Again, the meaning behind the presence of these two weapons in Moonless's back isn't clear. All we know is that eventually, these weapons were freed from the dungeon and brought against Moonless to no avail. So, Ragnar went into the dungeon looking for revenge on Lagard, was robbed of this, then went on to slay monsters with Moonless at his side, founding a family lineage of monster hunters that continue to take care of her into the present day. This leaves only one hero, whose story needs to be accounted for. Enki Ankarian is a dark priest, a member of an order dedicated to the study of the occult and transactionally worship the old gods in exchange for power. In his youth, Enki had a sister, and their order threw the two into ritualistic combat. Enki either murdered his sister by stabbing her in the back, and was then directed to animate her corpse, or accepted his defeat at her hands and was thrown down a well, where he subsisted on insects and rodents for an indeterminate amount of time. Either way, Enki is exactly the kind of guy you think he is at first glance. Later on in life, he attempted to ritualistically sacrifice himself, having believed he learned all that he could about the occult. Just as death approached, a vision revealed that a fair-haired man was destined to ascend to godhood. But Enki has other plans, specifically to usurp this man and steal his destiny, becoming a god himself. However, Enki is in for a rude awakening. After making contact with both Nazra, a former new god and a vile wizard, and Nosramus, the fifth member of the fellowship that was composed of the new gods, Enki comes to learn of the metaphysical glass ceiling, that godhood is nothing more than a trap set by the old gods to keep mortals from threatening them. But Enki doesn't give up so easily. Mahabharata is still rife with arcane secrets, and he intends to take anything of value. Nosramas gives him a spirit anchor, an item that will let him peer into the void without being seduced by the raw power of divinity and return. In his unique ending, Enki returns from the dungeon, still mortal, but enlightened. He goes on to write several books that describe the nature of the divine and reveal the secrets he learned to the world. These books are mentioned directly in Termina, confirming that this ending was achieved for Enki in the first game. These nominal heroes are far from the stalwart defenders of the mortal realm the fantasy genre typically casts in the role of protagonist. They're grimy, traumatized, bloodied, and above all else, human. And that's part of what makes Fear and Hunger so special.